This week on Counsil Customs, we get the 390 big block installed in the station wagon. No. Y'all ain't ready for that yet. It's at the end. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and put the headers on. And we're going to install these stage 8 fasteners. I mentioned them whenever I was doing the removal video, but now I'll go ahead and go over them as we're installing them. You can get a really close look at how these work. So these bolts are made so that way your headers won't back out. Now on these 390 cars, you can start your first 2 bolts like so. That actually got bent in just a hair. Let me pull that out. And then these are Sanderson headers. And if you see these grinded areas, all I did was go over them with a very soft, non-abrasive material. So that way I could get all the paint back off of them, because I need a good cleaning surface to go ahead and start putting gasket maker on the header. Sanderson says to not use a traditional gasket on their headers. They have their own patented design of how to do this without leaking. You put gasket maker, which I bought the highest resistant one I could at the auto parts store. This is their maximum temperature, but you put that on around the gasket surfaces and it seals up to the heads, so you don't have to worry about them leaking just by the gasket being the problem. We're going to do that, and then I'm going to show y'all how to tighten down these stage 8 fasteners to stop the bolts from backing out. So between the two of these, exhaust leaks, but between those two, and on top of that, I'm ditching the traditional 3-bolt flange on the headers. Instead of having the 3-bolt flange that the gasket normally goes to crap on, or I've had this happen before whenever I had a fresh build, left here, went to dinner, on our way home, I guess I didn't have the right style lock nuts on it. This is the second truck that I had built and actually put on the road, and started driving down the road, and the exhaust just got loud. Gonna find out the nuts had backed off and the exhaust was falling apart because I didn't have the right fasteners. But all of that can be avoided if you just go with V-bands. So these V-bands are made to make a really good seal. This end, this is what you weld onto your exhaust. I have the other one welded on this side. And if you can see, they mate perfectly flat to each other. And then the way that this is designed inside of here, they both slip in. You can see that the other one would be mated on the other side. And whenever you tighten this down like that, between the two of those, it'll seal up completely and it'll stop any exhaust leak or any leak of any kind. And then you have the best mating surface. This won't back out. Once it's tight, it's locked on there. But this is the best sealing exhaust you can get. So between doing V-bands, these bolts, and Sanderson's patented design with the sealant around the exhaust ports, these really should be 0 exhaust leak or headers. So let me start getting the Permatex put on the backside of the header here, and I'll get it set up into place, and then I'll start showing y'all how we get these things put on here. Got the gasket maker put on there. So I'm going to pull that out of the way just a hair more. But I'm going to get this all set down into place. Let that rest on those 2 bolts. All of them can be put in completely, as well as all of them can be completely tightened down. So You need them in, you need them completely tight, and then I'll show you how to put all the little keyway deals and how to make them super, super snug and as perfect as you can for this. We're going to take these little washers and we're going to put them, because your bolt is going to rotate this direction is loose. This direction is loose. So we want the tab to be as far down on this side as possible. So right here, there's I can't even stick my fingernail as a gap right there. So I'm going to take my E-clip, put it up on top. The way I like to do it is take the back side of a extension with the rounded edge, just pop that on. Makes it super simple. One little smack, boom. We have one stage 8 fastener installed. This bolt cannot back out now. So now I just need to go around and do that to all of them, and this header will be locked on. I just got to go over and do the other side. All right, so there it is. That's all the fasteners installed in there. See, that's them locked down. That bolt can't back out going this direction. Coming this way is loose, so that's locked in. This one, you can see there's a little bit more gap, but if I went down one, it didn't work, and that's as tight as I could get it. Same here. A little bit of gap is okay. You want them as tight as possible, but if there is a little bit of gap, it's okay. But you don't want it being stuck way up here, and then it gets half a rotation on it. But now I've got those all installed, so now I just got to go do the other side real quick, and then we'll see where we're at from there. Let me go get the other side done. So here we go. We got the performance adapter set up for the FE models, all FE models, to AOD, modular, or 6R80 transmissions. We have this all set up and adapted on here. I did take a video ahead of time for why I did it and what all went into it, and apparently we lost audio on that video. Now, with that being said, this is a aluminum adapter that is all the torque specs. Everything is done. You have a steel adapter for your crankshaft. It comes with a starter. Now, Performance Adapters did not pay me anything to do this, so I'm going to give my honest opinion. They should have went with a mini torque, high torque starter. I have now had to cut my header apart and completely rebuild it. Spent three and a half hours this morning. 3.5 hours of just completely cutting my header to crap and starting over, because these were Sanderson headers made to fit. If you know anything about the, I'm sitting right here in front of the car, the 66 and up big body Fords, you have to have that specific header. You can't have the prior year headers on it because of the way the headers are shaped to go around the crossmember. So these headers did not fit whatsoever. I don't know if they would have fit if it wasn't that specific header. But if you see right here, it sticks way out. So what I had to do for my solution was I had to cut this tube off, cut this one off, cap it on the inside, then run this one into this port, which if this was a race car or doing any kind of high performance stuff, then I would worry about that. But this car just has a mild cam, mildly upgraded engine, not that big of a deal. So I'm not that stressed about it, but it could have really been a bad situation very fast. But luckily, I'm not going big high horsepower stuff, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. I'm able to make it work. Because if the original manifolds on this car were the flat style where everything goes right across here, square ports, and it's real flat up against it. So I mean, even with this Y pipe that I welded on here, it's still flowing more air than it was before. I mean, I don't care how you cut it. That has better airflow than the factory little flat manifold that goes across there. So, is it as perfect as it was whenever Sanderson made it? No. Is it better than factory? Absolutely. Now that we have the adapter bolted up, torqued up, everything on here, we got the dowel pin set in, we have the starter in. Now that that's all done, headers are both bolted on, gasketed. We got our stage 8 fasteners all put on here. Now that that's all done, now we're going to go ahead and move forward with bolting the transmission up against the engine. So let me go grab it out, bring it over here, and we'll start stabbing it on. So this is our box body 90s model Ford pickup AOD transmission. So this is a 3-speed with overdrive transmission. The factory 1967 car had a 3-speed, no overdrive, just 3-speed transmission. Third gear was 1-to-1. This one, third gear is still 1-to-1, but you have an overdrive gear after that. So some people try to say that no, this will not bolt up behind this and handle what you're doing. But I'm not racing this car. I'm not doing burnouts. I'm not doing crazy stuff. I'm just going to cruise it. This will be plenty. I had the same setup in a 66 Ford pickup that I beat the crap out of, and the transmission held up fantastic. Now, the difference in between them was in the truck, I had a built small block, and this one we have a little bit of hopped up big block, but I beat that truck way harder than I would ever beat this car. And so this setup, what we're going to do now is go ahead and get the torque converter put into the transmission, get the transmission bolted to the engine, and then I'm going to jack this up in the air. We're going to put something underneath the tail shaft. We're going to change our pan gasket and our pan filter, and then this whole setup can come to a pause, because then I need to pull the factory transmission out of the car, and then we can stab this whole setup into there. So now let me get this bolted to here, and we'll show you all that. All right, so we just got the transmission out of the car. It was a whole process. I didn't video it because there was too many things going on at once. So regardless, old transmission's out. So I'm about to pull the pan off of here. We're going to drop the oil pan, take a look at all the oil that's in it, and I've got a new pan gasket and a new filter. So I'm going to get this all dropped. We'll get a look at everything that's inside. Make sure that there's nothing crazy going on inside of here, because this is used. I picked this transmission up off Marketplace for like $100. So there is no telling how it actually is. This thing might not even work, but we're gonna give it a whirl. So let me get this opened up here, and we'll take a look at it. This thing's actually looking like it's in good shape. There's the old gasket. It wasn't bad. It was holding. Didn't have any leaks around it. And really, internally, you can tell that this engine's been running with this fluid in it, because you can see some of the clutch material and stuff like that down in here, but that's not bad. I don't know how many miles were on this, but just a light covering on the very bottom here, that's not bad at all. For, I don't know, this could be a couple 100,000 miles, it could be 50,000 miles, but it doesn't look like it's in bad shape in here. So let me get this cleaned up. We'll get the filter replaced and get this buttoned all back up. Everything is prepped and ready for this to set down in its new home. So we're going to pick the engine up, slide her down in. So I'm going to put y'all in time lapse so y'all can watch. All right, so there it is. We got the engine and transmission sitting in the car. Next step, I'm going to start bolting all of everything back in. I have to look at what I've got to do to make the cross member fit. Not sure if it's going to bolt straight up. And I'll be able to pull the dimensions tomorrow to see our drive shaft. Is our drive shaft going to need to be changed? Or I know for a fact it's going to need a different slip yoke because I did test the slip yoke against this one, and I know they are different. So I know it at least needs a slip yoke, if not needs the drive shaft either lengthened or shortened. The old transmission did have a very long tail shaft on it. So with the length of this tail shaft that it had, it's a possibility we might not have to do everything to it completely. But, I mean, time will tell. Here's the other, or the drive shaft. This slip yoke is much larger in diameter than our new one. So I'm going to have to look into that. But here you go. And to look at her sitting in for the first time in this configuration. So we've got a long list of stuff to still do. I actually just picked up a different set of exhaust, different than the one that I showed y'all. It originally had Dynamax mufflers on it, changed out to, decided I was going to run Borla to get a little bit more sound out of it. And then I started looking at videos on YouTube, and I bought new mufflers. So probably not going to hear it on this run because I still got a lot to go putting everything back together. This probably won't be the fire up video. Probably next week, if we play our cards right, we can fire it up and do the break in of the cam and everything. So, but tomorrow we're going to get this thing all bolted back together. So this is where we're going to leave it for tonight. All right. So this morning we have been working on getting some of the little stuff assembled that was brand new in the box. So it's like this oil catch can here. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to mount it back here at the back of the engine. And instead of my PCV valve just going back to the carburetor and then the other one just having a breather on it, I'm going to run them both back to the oil catch can. Now, I understand this is a brand new rebuild engine, but you get blow-by and everything. I bought a brand new pickup not too long ago, put a catch can on it straight from the factory, and it had blow-by. So I'm going to install this just to help mitigate some of that issue, mainly because really it all boils down to whenever you go to a car show and you see all the old cars with nice chrome valve covers or polished valve covers and stuff, and you see a little bit of that oil weeping around the gaskets, I want to try to mitigate that problem by installing a oil catch can. So have all that come over here and catch in here, so we're not getting all that weeping and everything coming around our valve covers and making a dirty engine, especially whenever you spend a bunch of money on really nice valve covers and everything like that, and then you pop the hood and you got a bunch of oil staining and everything all over them. Will this solve the problem for good? I don't know. Never done this before. We're going to give it a shot. See if it solves the issue. With this setup here, we're going to do that. I got to start getting all the wiring and everything hooked up top. Still got to put in our temperature sending unit, hook up our Delta fan, our coil wiring, plug in the engine harness to the factory harness back there, get all that stuff hooked up. We're going to get our power steering pump and everything put on here, get our alternator put on here, get all of our heater hoses and everything hooked up. We still got to get the main power for our starter hooked up down low. And then I need to look at the pulleys, make sure our pulleys are going to work, make sure the belts that I have for the alternator and the power steering pump, make sure that these are still going to work now that we have different pulleys up front. I'm not sure if they will or not. I can go ahead and get the thermostat mounted and the thermostat neck, all that stuff. I have the Delta fan just zip tied up to the front of the car right now. The radiator is out because I need to take the radiator over to the local hot rod shop and see if they have a air conditioning condenser that will fit that perfectly for the front, so I can get that mounted to there before I mount that into the car for good. I need to make sure that that's on there because that's really the only spot I can put an air conditioning condenser. And next week's video will most likely pertain to AC stuff because my air conditioning compressor bracket should be here tomorrow, but that'll be on next week's video because I've got all the other stuff to go into that. Still got to mount the unit under the dash and all that, but y'all see that next week. But we've got a lot to bolt up here. I still haven't, I don't know if I'll get to it this week or not, but I still have the transmission is just sitting on a jack stand on the back because I have to look at what I got to do to get the transmission crossmember bolted in. And I'm pretty positive it's at a different location now. So I'm going to have to figure out how much I need to move it forward or backwards. And if I need to make it adapt to a different style of transmission mount and all that stuff. So I'm not sure if we'll get to that point, but we have a lot going on up here in the engine bay before we even have to worry about that. So let's get worried about all this and start getting everything up here bolted up. All right, so I'm going to hold up on tightening up this air conditioning bracket. I was looking at it, and if I put it to the front pulley, it'll make this belt almost work. It's still not quite right. Remember, this is factory belt for the factory pulleys, and we have aftermarket pulleys on here. But if I remember correctly, the AC compressor mounts here and it goes off the second groove of this setup. So right now the power steering is running off the second groove. So I'm going to see if possibly mount that and then run one belt that goes around both. See if that will work. If it won't work, then we'll have to figure something else out. But I know that bracket bolts here and comes up. Air conditioning compressor sits right in this general area. But I believe it runs off second groove. If not, it runs off third groove, and I need to buy a new upper V belt. But I know for a fact that this belt is too long for this one if I'm going to utilize this setup. And if I decided to go all the way around, it's too short. But I don't know if I have to go all the way around. But if I try to just go off the front pulley by itself and go back, it's got my belt all out of whack if I try to go to this one. It's set up to be in line right there. So that's what I got right now on that. We're gonna play with that a little more whenever we get the next bracket to go in here for the AC compressor. With this carburetor, this fuel rail, it's a little Chinese fuel rail I bought from a local hot rod shop that sells a lot of cheap parts, but I can't get it to seal up. This thing is just leaking from every little orifice. It sealed up for a little while. And then I parked the car up for a while and hadn't started it, and went in there and started it, and this thing was just puking fluid out. So we're going to just completely ditch this whole fuel rail. And I've got a jegs unit here we're going to go with, which is all AN fittings all the way through. But we're going to put this unit on. I don't know how much better it's going to be. I don't know if this is a good quality part or if this is just one of those cheap, generic, chintzy little things that Jeg sells. Some of Jeg's stuff is good. Some of it's bad. I've heard from many other people the same thing. We're going to completely ditch all of this stuff here, and we're going to go with all new. One thing I do notice about this Jeg setup is they send you two different styles of T-fitting, and the two different styles you get are with or without the Allen wrench spot on the side for you to have a fuel pressure gauge. Now, I'm running a fuel pressure gauge on the car that's going to be in a different location. It's going to be right there by the fuel pressure regulator. So I'm going to go for the one without, just to minimize leaking. Take it out of the equation. You don't have to worry about it being a part of the equation. All right, so that's tight. Be cautious. You don't over tighten. These are aluminum. You don't want to crack them and mess them all up, just because you want to He-Man that thing all together. So you have the choice. If these things don't wind up being perfectly flat, a lot of people run it outward. I think I'm going to run it inward, so that way I have no excuse for anything getting close to that electric choke and arcing out. I really don't want to have that being a problem, having fuel and electrical mixing. I opted to put a barb fitting off the front instead of continuing to build AN fuel line. Rubber line's just fine for what we're doing. It's carburetor. We're not running super high fuel pressure race stuff. Just 7 pounds, just up and down the road cruiser car. We don't need nothing crazy. Just we can just run rubber line out of there over to our regulator and be done. So let me put this on the car. Actually, let me take a second. I'm going to pull this stud out. I'm going to go ahead and cut it to length for our air cleaner, and then we'll go ahead and bolt this on. So here we go. There's a couple of things on an engine build that just feel like milestones. The moment you get the heads on, the moment you get the valve covers on, and the moment you get the carburetor on, it just feels like you're nearing completion. We've got a little bit left. Snap all the stuff on the carburetor. Carburetor is back on, fully hooked up with all the vacuum and all that stuff, not fuel. All right, so we got the 390 installed. It is bolted to the car. Everything from the firewall to about right here is completed. We don't have the AC compressor. Or the compressor bracket. We have the compressor. We need the compressor bracket, and we need the condenser for the radiator. That's the two things we're missing, and we can start on the AC system. Besides that, we're on a hold for anything belt related on the front of the engine because we want to make sure that how all that stuff lands in the lines. We don't have, or we're waiting to install the radiator because I'm going to weld brackets on the front of the radiator to hold the condenser. So that'll be on next week's deal. I have the transmission cross member. I'm going to take that to work with me tomorrow and be able to clean it up real good. Use our pressure washer and everything at work because the one at work has steam. We got degreaser. We got all that stuff. I'll be able to clean it up really, really good and then put it in a blast room, have it blasted, and then I'll bring it, and then I can do whatever I got to do from there to really make it fit the car, and we can put the transmission, bolt the transmission in. It's sitting in place. I already held it in place, and it looks like it's going to line up perfectly. Now, next week, we're either going to start on AC next, or we're going to start on exhaust. I've got to build the exhaust back. I have to order a new slip yoke for the drive shaft. This one is way too big for the AOD transmission. I need a 28 spline setup for this car, for this transmission. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to have to cut the drive shaft or not because I need to change out that slip yoke. I know you can measure it without it, but man, it makes it so much better whenever you have the slip yoke and we can actually measure it. Now, I saw a YouTube video of this guy once, and I want to hear if y'all ever seen this or heard of it before. The guy said that old man told him, if you can cut your drive shaft, and instead of taking and balancing it, you can drop a golf ball down inside of it. And that golf ball is 1 ounce, and it'll find exactly where it needs to sit to balance, and it'll balance itself out going down the highway. I ain't ever done it. I've never met anybody who's done it before, but the guy that had it done, he had a big block with a big 671 supercharger and everything hanging out the hood. So he said it worked great. He said he never had any vibration. So if y'all have ever heard of that or anything, hit in the comments because if it's something y'all have said and done, I'm willing to give it a shot. If it's something that you're going to have the naysayers that say it's not worth it. It's too crazy, but I mean, that guy's doing it, but we'll give it a shot or we won't. So y'all tell me what y'all think because we might have to cut the drive shaft in this car. We have to build the full exhaust. I have some other little tricks up my sleeve for that too. I've got some different designing and everything I'm going to do with the exhaust. I'm a really, really, really picky whenever it comes to exhaust. I will not be done with a vehicle until it sounds right. So I've got another set of mufflers here. Not just the ones I showed you. I actually ended up buying another set for the car. So I've got that. I've got a different idea for how to do it. I've got different materials for exhaust back sitting over there. So that's going to be it for this week. So stick around for next week. We're going to do a whole lot more to this car and try to get it all wrapped up. See y'all next week.